Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Sencast, a podcast for special educational needs and disability. Each week on the podcast, we talk about a different topic within the world of SEND to improve our knowledge, to provide support to professionals working in schools, to empower parents and to raise awareness. On this week's episode, we discuss supporting young people with long-term illness in education. And I was joined by Josh Pelled, the founder and CEO of Bright Futures UK, a pioneering charity dedicated to reintegrating young people into education after serious long-term illness. His journey is deeply personal, having survived cancer twice, first at the age of 5 and again at 16. B Squared is the company behind this podcast, and we've been helping schools since 1997, and we have been breaking down curriculums and frameworks into smaller steps before P-levels even existed. Connecting Steps, our assessment software, is our biggest product, and it can be used to celebrate progress for a wide range of students, from the most complex to young people working towards independence and employment. Eversense is our evidence for learning and parental communication tool, helping to bridge the gap between schools and parents. As well as this podcast, we have Sencast Sessions, our online CPD. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our products and how they can help you. Now, let's get on with that podcast. I am joined this week by Josh Pelled, the founder and CEO of Bright Futures UK, a pioneering charity dedicated to reintegrating young people into education after long-term illness. His journey is deeply personal, having survived cancer twice, first at the age of 5 and again at 16. And these experiences revealed the profound educational social challenges that come with prolonged medical absences, inspiring him to create a support system he wished he had. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Lovely to be here, Dale. Thank you for having me.
You are very, very welcome. When we record these podcasts, each of my guests sends me information about themselves and topic they want to talk about. And I love reading the guest's background and seeing their personal connection to the topic and also kind of that perspective they have. But your amazing story of surviving cancer twice and the perspective you have, I would say, is extremely unique. But in reality, and the reason we are recording this podcast, is there are a number of children taking extended time out of school due to long-term illness. And they need support, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, we'd like to think that this is a very unique perspective to a few and far between individuals. Unfortunately, this is something that it is national. It's an issue that affects everyone in some kind of way, whether it's directly through yourself, through a child, through a friend at school, or someone you know. There will be ripples and ramifications for everyone.
So, I don't know if you probably don't know the exact numbers, but you probably got good. So how many children a year are we talking?
So this is a really interesting question. Bright Futures has been around for 9 years now. And typically when an organization is set up, it's based on a proposition. What is the problem? What is the scale of the issue? And what are we looking to do to fix it? One of the biggest challenges Bright Futures had when we first started was that as the first and only organization dedicated to supporting children and young people who are out of education for long-term illnesses, we are trend-setting, you might call it. The government, unfortunately, doesn't hold data on the number of young people who are out of education. And we've worked with freedom of information requests, with the Department of Health and Social Care, the Department of Education. It didn't exist. So one of the most important things that Bright Futures has done, apart from delivering support to young people, it is created what the issue is. We've done a lot of research, and we've led on producing the first ever national report of the impact of illness in education. And what that's meant is we're now able to put an estimated figure, fairly accurate, to the size of the population affected by long-term illness education. And going back to our original point of this is not a unique item, this is affecting around 270,000 young people a year, which is extortionate. It's crazy.
That's a big number. And a lot of them, that is them being impacted every year. But for some, it's a year, I'm guessing.
Yes, it's every individual is different. Every illness is unique. two young people going through cancer will have completely different experiences. Same with mental health and every type of illness. So this number identifies young people between the age of 5 and 24 who are missing 20% or more of their education.
That's a big number.
That's a very big number.
And again, they talk about government have their attendance criteria. Everyone's after that attendance. But there are those children with under 80%, and there's nothing you can do.
No, the school, the school are fantastic, but schools are overwhelmed. Schools are already stretched, and I think we're seeing a lot being done to try and support them. But it's by no means, it's an issue that affects young people that is completely out of their control, and something they just have to face. But being out of school, they can be out of school for a couple of months, they can be out of school for a couple of years. Everyone is different, but the support they need, very similarly, is the same across the board.
So we're not just talking that lost learning. Not being at school has huge social implications as well.
Yes. If we think back to our time in school, school was a bubble. School was everything. You spent all your days there. You built friendships. You learned things. It shaped who you were going to be as a person, pretty much, from the academics all the way to what are you going to do when you're older. And not being in education takes away all of that. The fundamental is obviously the learning. We go to school because we're in lessons, we're being taught. But it's not just the academic learning, it's the social learning, it's the career-based learning, it's what am I going to do next? How am I going to do it? Being removed from an education setting takes away all of that. But it's not just having that removed that's the issue for young people facing long-term illness. It's the challenges of having to face the illness as well. Because it's not just not being in school, it's then the treatment, the appointments, the feeling crappy, the not being able to see friends because you're isolated and you can't be in contact with other people. So there's additional layers that make dealing with this and living normal life outside of school almost impossible alone.
It's not like you can meet your friends at the school gates and walk home with them. No. And even when they're doing stuff at weekends, you probably can't be involved, or depending on the situation, it's a very lonely time.
Very lonely, very lonely. And the focus, I think, for most people, or everyone, is let's get you better. Let's make sure medically you can recover. And there is the view that you can return to whatever normality is for you. The issue that a lot of people don't recognize, it is all the skill loss, all the social loss, everything you lose out on from the period that you're going through treatment and recovery. It's hard to just pick that up. It's almost impossible by yourself to just pick that up when you recover. So the idea of this person's finished their treatment and they're going to go back to school next week, as lovely as that sounds, it's not practical, because there is so much that needs to happen to reintegrate someone back into education and back into what normality was for them.
And even when you do successfully, I'm air quoting successfully, reintegrate, you might kind of be like, oh yeah, my friends, yep, I'm back, not seeing you for 2 years or whatever, or hardly seen you. And then you'll be having some fun and you're not in on the in-jokes. You're not in on that. Do you remember that thing last year? Do you remember that school trip we went on? Do you remember? You have not just missed seeing your friends for 2 years. You've missed out on every fun thing, every story, every fail, everything that kind of friends have.
Yeah.
That you go back to quite regularly as friends. You'll be reminiscing. You've missed out on all of that.
Absolutely.
And the moment they start telling one that story, you're back to, I wasn't there.
Absolutely. And that's not something that we can fix, because they're not going to be in school and there's nothing we can do to fill that missing gap. But we can try to do things to bridge the gap between illness and education and make sure that a young person feels as supported as possible as included as possible, and has extended the same fundamental opportunities that young people in mainstream education or in any education setting are afforded. The school trips, the special classes that you go to, or PHSE, whatever it is, trying to fulfill that gap is important to going back in. And you may have had different experiences, but having those experiences is important.
Well, I suppose this is one thing where everyone said technology is bad. In this situation, technology is huge.
Absolutely.
Because you might not be able to see your friends, but you can still play whatever on the Xbox or the PlayStation with a headset and be there.
Yeah. And kids now are so much more online. So, I mean, for example, we as an organization pre-pandemic used to be 100% in person. Everything we did, from meeting young people to delivering the sessions, was in person. We found real benefits, and Bright Futures found real benefits of moving online. It's done exactly what you've just said. It's opened up a whole new world for young people to engage with learning, to engage with socializing, to engage with being there when they're not there. And that's really powerful.
And it allows you to be more responsive for you, because if someone needs help there and then, you can't say, yeah, I can get up to you on Tuesday. I'm going to go see someone halfway up and then I can continue up to you. Now it's sort of like, yeah, I've just talked to a child in Newcastle and I'm now just talking to a child in Bristol.
Absolutely.
Technology
that's
is good.
Been fantastic for us. I mean, young people going through long-term illnesses will struggle to move around physically, whether it's a limitation on their physical abilities, whether it's infection control, whether it's just feeling crappy. Opening access to support online has removed that barrier almost completely. There are limitations that we can't control, but being able to speak to someone who's in a befriending program all the way up in Scotland when you're down in London, and having those shared experiences online, that's incredible.
It is. We need to make sure. I know there is that thing. We don't want our children glued to devices. We definitely do not. And actually, the reason they are is because we are. They're copying us. Or we just want them to have it so we can get what we want. So don't blame the kids. It's all on the adults. But we want them to be able to access those devices and know how it works, so that it is that bridge to the world they're currently not accessing.
Absolutely.
It's that bridge.
It's balance. Everything's about balance. So having that time online to make sure you don't lose out when you're going through something beyond your control that you have to go through, means that when you are able to go back to in person and remove those screens and then, as I say, be old school and be with someone in a space, that makes the transition much easier. And it makes all transition points, leaving school to getting support online, a lot easier now that's online. Returning to school, again, makes those transition points much more seamless.
So we've been talking about the social side, which for me is that mental health. It's kind of probably the biggest barrier before you get to anything else, is kind of that mental health is probably the first thing you've got to support. Education will come after that, because you're not going to learn if you're not in the right headspace.
Exactly, being ready to learn.
But you've done a lot of work about the impact of long-term physical mental health conditions and that disruption of education. And one of the figures you've given me is the impact on future outcomes is clear. 79% of 18 to 24-year-olds who are out of work due to ill health only have qualifications at GCSE level or below, compared to just 34% of their peers.
It's huge disparity, isn't it?
And that's not a choice they made. That happened to them.
Completely beyond their control, something they just can't deal with. It's not something they can influence. Absolutely.
But it is, therefore, in that point, it's going to have that lifetime impact on their education. Because there is a strange bit in education that kind of, there's a conveyor belt. Yeah, GCSEs happen age 16. Yes, you can retake English and maths, but if you want to do history, it's not so easy to kind of retake the other areas.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, I've got my history and I need to do an A-level. Where can I do that. Oh, I can't And actually, yes, there are routes, but they're complicated. They take ages and things like that. And so it's not you do it next year, or you just missed. Oh no, this implication can have huge long-term implications for them.
Absolutely. And the real solution to this is supporting young people at the earliest possible point of interventions. So bringing kind of how Bright Futures works, we work with NHS Trust as our primary point of partnership. And the reason we do that is because a young person facing long-term illness will, at some point within their illness journey, typically very early on during diagnosis, pass through an NHS trust. That is the way for us to centralize access or part referral routes into Bright Futures services as quickly as possible. Bright Futures works throughout the entirety of a young person's illness. So from the point of diagnosis all the way through to the point of reintegration back into education. So we are a fixed point throughout that entire journey, and hopefully at the earliest possible point. And that's very much to help influence and support the solution of the problem we're discussing, where young people will have much better outcomes if they're supported properly early on. They lose less skills, they lose less social benefits, they lose less opportunities that others are afforded, and ultimately will help to have better outcomes in the long term. They'll achieve better grades, they'll go on to the pathways they want to, and all being well, achieve whatever it is they want to in the future, whatever profession, industry they'd like to go into.
So to access that education, obviously, there's your school going on, they can't access that. What is the route to that education currently?
So from a statutory perspective, the route for young people is if they miss 15 days or currently, we obviously know there's a lot going on with education reform. If a young person misses 15 days or more of education, the school has a duty to refer the young person to the local authority. The local authority would then carry out an assessment of their needs, and if deemed appropriate, they would then be responsible for providing a full-time, or what is considered a full-time education replacement. That is currently the statutory pathway for a young person facing long-term illness in education. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that we've got an overwhelmed system. We've got far too many young people who do require support external from school. And the current mechanism pushes them all, or a lot of them, towards the SEND provision, which is educational health and care plans. As we've all seen, and as we all know, the number of requests for EHCPs is growing year on year. The number of appeals against EHCPs is growing year on year. And we've got a statutory system that unfortunately can't handle the current workload that's required of them. So what that translates to on the ground is that there are a huge amount of young people who are having support delayed, not just by a couple of weeks, but by months or sometimes years. There are young people that are unfortunately being turned away from support where they should be given that. But that is currently the mechanisms for support for young people who have to leave school due to illness.
I always find this missing 15 days. There is a statement like, if you miss more than 15 days, you're classed as special education, or because to kind of catch up, you need something different too. Therefore, that is classed as special. It's a kind of weird, really? So if someone goes on a 3-week holiday to Africa because of some big family thing and they come back, technically they've got what? Yeah. It's a weird, and I think it's one of those things which kind of someone said ages ago when no one took their children out of school for holidays. No one did this. The number of children probably missing education due to long-term illnesses was probably in the tens. And it was, oh, yeah, it's fine. We'll just do this. Actually, with everything going on, that number is growing. and will probably only grow. And it's like, and again, the fact you have to go down the EHCP route, and as you said, there's lots of changes coming up, and that kind of EHCP route seems to be for kind of the cohort we're talking about here. That's almost non-existent, looking at the proposed changes.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because we're so supportive of there being reform. There needs to be reform. The current systems are overwhelmed and not working for the young people they're meant to be working for. So we're really positive. The school white paper that was released early in March, I believe it was, although dates do blend nowadays, end of Feb, beginning of March. There are some fantastic proposed changes, and they're really looking to make changes that are positive and going to support people. The issue stems from the fact that Bright Futures is the first organization tackling this issue significantly. We didn't have data. We didn't know the scale of it. We didn't know how many people were affected. So historically, when reforms have been put in place or when statutory provision and guidances have been created, this demographic wasn't a demographic that was really considered. So you're right that when we talk about special educational needs, our demographic isn't the first thought when you come to that. And what we've seen off the back of the white paper proposed changes is that it's unfortunately going to further marginalize young people facing long-term illnesses who are not in education. So the two key factors that we've picked up on that are important is educational health and care plans are going to become more difficult to access. There's going to become stricter guidances around them. And for young people facing long-term illnesses who are already on the fringe of that demographic, although they should be included and they do access EHCPs, it's going to become increasingly harder to access. The flip side is the government's focusing a lot on putting resource into school to help our overwhelmed schools and teachers, which we are fully supportive of. However, when we look at the mechanism of individual support plans in school, by definition, children and young people facing long-term illnesses who are out of education because of those illnesses will not be accessing those. It's fantastic to help with the transition back into education. And we're very hopeful that when those are put in place, or if they are put in place, young people transitioning back into education after long-term illnesses will have really solid and structured ISPs that will help that transition and reduce any risk of NEET or dropping out or emotional avoidance. But for those young people not in school, those two proposed changes don't work, unfortunately.
No, it is. I again, we were talking beforehand, I step back from the whole thing. I kind of look at the whole pipeline. We still haven't got enough information at the time of recording about the 7 packages at the end. But look at those 7 packages, which if you have an EHCP, you get put into one of those. The group of children and young people we're talking about today are just not on that path at all. It's a completely different path. You will go through the target plus, then to EHCP. That's not for every child. That's for in the future. Those children entering the system, that's kind of that journey. For the children we're talking about, they're going to be the universal provision. Everything's going hunky-dory. Then it's not.
Yes. There's no transition
binary,
of those steps, isn't there?
It's not. It's just like a switch, and it's like need support now. Those 7 packages or whatever they're going to be don't fit this. And although as I was saying earlier, that actually to me, there isn't really there may or may not be a special educational need with these group of children. It's just the circumstances are causing the need for this. But then, as you rightly said, is actually by definition they are kind of fitting into that criteria of a disability.
Yes. Yeah, the government's definition of a disability is that it impacts day-to-day life and your ability to carry out normal tasks day to day. If you're suffering from a cancer diagnosis, from an eating disorder, from something beyond your control that ultimately impacts your ability to carry out normal day-to-day life for you, you are by definition considered to have a disability by the government. And that puts you front and center within the HCP criteria. So it's an interesting one that they are included, but they're not included. It's a
Yes.
horrible middle ground for them.
It's kind of, if you look at it all, and it is SEND, but again, a lot of the white paper to me is focusing on mainly that the SEN part. There is a sensory and physical section, but yeah, again, it'd be interesting as we have this consultation that we're still in the middle of, how those with how that disability side, if that changes over time, if there's actually more. Because almost you look through it and going, are they kind of even mentioned in here? Where do they come in? What's the impact? So yeah, there are kind of groups of children which have been missed out, I feel, with the white paper, but they are kind of unique groups with their own path. And we were kind of saying is, should these pupils fit under SEND, or should it be a separate thing with clear defined process with funding around that need? Yeah, it's interesting.
Absolutely. And I think Bright Future's perspective on this is that whilst current reforms are taking place, and while the understanding is that young people with long-term illnesses are currently included within the SEND mechanisms and the SEND provisions, we continue to see what we can do for them more within this space. But you're absolutely right that the needs of young people with long-term illnesses compared to the needs of young people with neurodiversity issues, with learning disabilities, with sensory, it's different. So it wouldn't be appropriate for us, or it wouldn't be just for us to put in place a blanket provision for different groups with such specific needs. And I think that the research that Bright Futures has done, that we're releasing, or will have released by the end of by the release of this state, is going to help educate everyone on this issue. Putting figures, putting data to an issue helps everyone produce solutions that are more appropriate. So now we're aware of the scale and the size of this issue. Now Bright Futures has become experts, spent 9 years really perfecting a scalable and cost-effective solution. We hope that as part of this consultation period, we can educate the right decision makers on the fact that this demographic is different and does need different support. And Bright Futures will play as big a role as we can to work alongside different stakeholders to make sure that that is translated into on the ground supporting young people provisions.
Definitely. And it is. I do feel I'm optimistic about the changes. I'm optimistic about where things are. There's still lots of details missing, which then may change my mind. We will see. But it's one of those times where we should be asking, is everyone covered in this? Yeah. Since kind of the guidance was written or released, the kind of the current SEND back in 2014, a lot has changed.
Yes.
And some of the groups which were kind of saying in their tens are now huge. Lots of changes in the world, lots of other educational changes, academisation, various other things haven't had that effect. But it's that opportunity to go, right, is everyone covered? Is everyone going to get the support they need? Or are we still missing? And that's, I think, at that EHCP end, where I kind of think they haven't really, I'm hoping they didn't release the information, or they don't have the information, because as part of that big listen that happened at the end of last year, they got a lot of information and gone, okay, we need to listen to this. Therefore, we aren't quite clear on what we need to do. Therefore, we are less specific because we have been listening. And we need to still develop this further. I'm kind of hoping that's the reason it's not that detailed, because they have gone, okay, we did get this wrong. Okay, you need this. Okay, cool. And you are talking to people in government, aren't you?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the government's realised that they need to re-educate themselves. that's why there are these extended consultation periods where they are calling for evidence from different organizations to help them learn. The critical thing will be how they take that learning forward and how they translate it into policy and procedures. We're absolutely involved in discussions, and we're speaking to people in the SEND task force and Department of Education and other stakeholders. And what we found is exactly what we're talking about here. It's that this issue is something that's flown under the radar for whatever reason. We're helping identify what the issue is and helping educate the relevant individuals on the scale of it. And we're just Bright Futures is really making sure that we stay committed to a proper and functional solution, both from government and both from external organizations that may support government and statutory provision. Because, like we said, the scale of this issue is not insignificant. It's not a niche issue in the most typical sense of the word niche. It is wide and significant on a big scale.
Definitely. So we talked about the role of the ISPs, and there are things, I think secondary schools it's a little bit easier, and especially at colleges where a lot of time that work can be shared on Google Classroom.
Yeah.
And there is in some situations, schools can probably do a really good job of keeping that connection to that child going. But again, sharing the work and having that time to ask questions and maybe be taking through a concept that you don't understand is completely different.
Yeah.
So it isn't just a case of what I'm going is, it's not just a case of the government saying to schools, well, you just need to make sure anyone who can't attend school has access to this. Yeah, that's fine on a short term. It's fine on that, or it's like someone has got the flu for a week or they got the measles, share the work, give it to them, catch up when they come back in, everything fine, good. But not when they're missing long term. That's
absolutely
not, they need more.
And there's already cases where there is fantastic support from schools. So we absolutely don't want to discount that schools want to do this. They have a real urge and recognize the issue. I think it's the fact that schools across the country will have disparity in resources, in funding, in access to students. So there's a huge amount of variables which will kneecap schools from putting in place a standardized and consistent provision for any student they have facing this issue. And we need to take a step back. We need to zoom out and think about what's relevant for all schools who are well-provisioned, well-resourced, well-funded, have capacity, to schools that are completely overstretched, have really complex cases within their school, and don't have the ability to stretch themselves further than that. And I think that's really where we want to focus government and make sure that there is something that is fit for all, not just fit for some.
Yeah. And I was literally, as you're talking, I was literally thinking of someone who I knew actually, they had a weakened immune system. So as soon as the news of COVID happened, it's like, I'm out of school.
Yeah. Lockdown.
And when everyone went back, no, staying at home. But what the school did is the child became a laptop, more or less.
Yeah.
So they had that webcam on, they had the mic on, the speakers on, that would face the board when the teacher was up there. But when it was group work, the laptop would go to a table.
Yeah.
And it was like they were sitting with their friends.
Yeah.
And I like that. And it's good and it works, but that takes thought. That actually what I'm doing, what do they need, how can I include them?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of that. But there's also is cool, you can't really take the laptop and play football with it though. You can't take the laptop, you're not going to take it to the lunch, so you're still missing out. And it's great that schools are being creative and doing what they can. As you said, it's not that they're not, there's just lots of barriers and there's limitations of what they can currently do.
Yeah, spot on. Absolutely. And I think I would call it a band-aid for a much bigger problem. It's that you can put a laptop on a desk and they can listen into the class. But I think you've got to actually look at the young people themselves. Is that when kids are messing around in class or having a joke or having a laugh, the laptop's not going to be included. When they go to play football, you can't take the laptop and throw it at the goal and say, that's going to save a goal. It's not going to work. So it does need to, and I think then you've got to look at the young person as well who's sitting on the laptop. They're sitting at home. They're going through treatment. They're feeling crappy. They're not sure what's going on outside of what they can see on the screen. It's not going to be comfortable for them. And as much as it may include them in the class content, it doesn't include them in the class.
Definitely. I was just wondering, I kind of think about that. You want kind of that person who's kind of understands. So you talked about the befriending program. So is that child to child, or is that adult? What is that? Because that's one thing I'm quite curious about.
Sure. So all Bright Futures programs are personalized to the young person or group we're working with. So no one program will be the same. When we sit down with a young person and we assess their needs, we will, in the most basic form, essentially go, what is it you're missing from not being in school? Let's go down the avenue of a befriending program. They're isolated, they're lonely, their friends don't quite know what's going on with them. They've got hobbies and interests, which are football, an online computer game, and this and that. And they really want to spend more time doing one of those things. Way Bright Futures works and why we're such a scalable and cost-effective solution is that we plug into the community. We use professionals who volunteer their time to deliver our programs. So we work with tutors, we work with teachers, we work with freelancers, executives, anyone with certain skills or qualifications. We will work with, train up, support, and then help them deliver the most fantastic programs to young people. So in a befriending program, a young person may be interested in, let's go with Minecraft, which is a big computer game that a lot of people love nowadays. They may feel comfortable with someone who's more similar age to them, maybe male, and has these X, Y, and Z interests as well. So we match very specifically based on the requirements, requests, and goals of young people. Peer-to-peer befriending, kind of a younger person supporting a young person, has fantastic outcomes. The relatability, the desire to want to come to the session because you're seeing someone who is now essentially a friend. It's beautiful. Some young people may want to go through mentoring and they may be looking at the career progression after they finish illness. So it's more appropriate that we find an executive of an industry or a business who can sit with them and help them understand the industry, the pathways in, and actually work with them to take those steps. So the age and demographic of our befrienders, tutors, mentors, workshop leaders can vary, but we always make sure it's relevant to the young person and what they're looking for. A nice story I like to tell, if we could all take ourselves back to school time, is when you had a teacher who you liked, you turned up on time, you typically did the homework, you paid attention, and you weren't really causing too many problems for them. Teachers who you didn't like, you maybe didn't engage with as well. You maybe were a bit late on homework, a bit disruptive in their class. So making sure that we match a young person with someone who can not only deliver the content needed, but actually build a relationship is really important. So when we go back to your original question about, is it more peer-to-peer or is it not? It's completely bespoke to the young person, their needs. And that is what produced the best outcomes.
That's really nice. There is a thing of you obviously, if you've got long term, you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days. That might be a weekly cycle, it might be longer, it might just be random. But someone who just gets that and kind of, and it's like, you don't mean you're ill. Some people that, like your partner, may just want you on the sofa next to them, so they just know you're there, and that's all you have to do. And sometimes that friendship is just, oh, let's do this. And you literally start the call and immediately you just read the room. And you just go, yes, so how's the week? And you literally just, and that's the thing. It's that when you've got those friends who don't understand and they're bouncing around and they've literally included you, but they're still going to be bouncing around. It's like, I can't do that, but you still need a connection, but who just gets, I need something, but not that.
Yeah. And it's almost someone that doesn't have any preconceived ideas of you, doesn't know that before you start going through treatment, this is what you used to be like. And now after your treatments and surgeries, this is what you're like. So it's a completely new outlet for a young person, but it's really important that whatever program they're working with Bright Futures, academic, social, more career focused, they have that comfort of who they're with. They have that ease of the session. They build that connection. They build that relationship. They've got someone there who cares. The fact that the people are volunteering with us are not paid tutors, teachers, friends, mentors, adds another string to that bow, because when I know someone's here for me because they want to be, not because they're paid to be, I'm instantly more engaged. So that's really powerful as well.
Definitely. So kind of just come to the end. So basically at the time of release, which is going to be the middle of April, your report's out so they can learn a lot more about this group, kind of the impacts and so on.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got the SEND reform consultation is still ongoing.
Yes.
So if you haven't submitted a response yet, please do. And please kind of have that read. And if you know someone, kind of add something in about these young children, youngsters and children, and kind of actually it's a different route. Kind of what you need is going to be different. You're not going to be needing a specialist school because you still can't get there.
Absolutely.
So it's a completely different, but it needs funding. It needs that to happen. And again, there is that that every child has that right to education, and that is in law, and blah blah blah. But currently, the only mechanism is HCPs, and that's kind of disappearing. But actually, there should be something else.
Absolutely.
But as we wrap up, anything you want to end on?
I first say thank you very much for having me on. It's been great to speak, and I think we're so interested in all things SEND and education that this is such a relevant topic to Bright Futures. And to me personally, I think I'd encourage people who are going through this to raise their voice. It's an issue that you don't deserve to be overlooked on. Bright Futures is now here if you do need support, so please do reach out. We are, as kind of we've just mentioned, we are submitting evidence to the SEND reform. So we'd welcome anyone. By the time of release of this podcast, there's still going to be time to submit evidence. So we would deeply encourage anyone who is facing these challenges to reach out to Bright Futures. And we'd be more than happy to discuss involving that in our submission. But I think that the biggest message to people facing this issue is you are not alone. There are people here like Bright Futures and others to support you. And please do seek it out, because what young people are going through when they're facing long-term illnesses is no fault of their own, and they shouldn't have to suffer, and they shouldn't be given different opportunities because of it. So please do seek support where you need it.
Definitely. That's a really good message. Thank you for coming today. It's really good. It's a really, as many of my guys know, it's really important. And what I love about the podcast is I learn lots, and I come across not groups I haven't thought of. Not like I'm not going to think. It's that haven't even occurred to me. It actually, and there are more than we realise. So it's always good to sit there and have that opportunity to learn. And you sit there and realise, oh, actually, I have had someone who's been impacted by this. I just haven't twigged. I just went, okay, yeah. So yeah, it's always important to kind of raise that. And this is a complete, it's a unique group, and that support is for them is going to be unique. And you've shared loads of links for me, so to contact you, your socials and so on. The report that you've mentioned will be in the show notes. You also give me ONS statistics, people with long-term health issues, which is a report from 2019, and statutory guidance around ensuring a good education for children who cannot attend school because of health needs. So lots of useful information for anyone kind of going through this. And you will find those show notes, as always, wherever you listen to the podcast or on the Zencast website. And if you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics, or anything else, please send an email to hello@thesencast or send a message via social media. At B Squared, we've been helping schools since 1997 to support children and young people with SEND, and we've been breaking down curriculums and frameworks into smaller steps before P-levels even existed. Connecting Steps, our assessment software, is our biggest product, and it can be used to celebrate progress for a wide range of students, the most complex to young people working towards independence. We can help you show that progress from starting point. And EverSense is our evidence for learning and parental communication tool, helping to bridge that gap between parents and schools. And as well as this podcast, we also have our Sendcast sessions, our online CPD around SEND. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our products and how they can help you. But as we're at the end, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Sendcast. It's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.